all across the fantasy universe. Welcome one and all to the 2-Point Stance, brought to you by fantasypoints.com. I am Brian Drake. Follow me on Twitter at Drake Fantasy. Joined as always, it's our second episode, so saying always is kind of nuts, but hey, it's factual. It's Joe Dolan. You know him, love him, fantasypoints.com, managing editor over there. Follow him on Twitter at FG_Dolan. We're back for episode 2. They didn't cancel us yet, Joe. Congratulations, I guess. But how you doing, buddy?
I'm very happy about that, Drake. We're recording in the morning, so I didn't get to use my new light. So check this out. I got one of those those fancy lights, and yeah, I have a button I can press to turn it on and off, but I don't need it this morning. I have lovely natural light here in the Fantasy Points studio. Do you see Crimpet back there, by the way?
Yeah, you got a dog sitting on your couch. If you're not watching us on YouTube, he's Joe's dog. Crimpet is his name?
Yeah, her name. So I have two. Let's see. They're popular on the Ross podcast. They were popular on the daily lineup today. Now, this is Butterscotch right there. Now, you might notice Butterscotch has a muzzle on because she's had a paw infection since Thanksgiving. And we've been really trying to it was what do you call antibiotic resistant. So we have her on a different kind of cocktail of drugs there. But she's herself.
Sounds like a party.
Yeah, it's a party. But those are my two girls. They love listening here. They're probably absorbing much more information than the average listener is. So those are my babes, and they're here to listen along to the show. Drake, we're talking NFC quarterback situations today. I thought that was a fun exercise with the AFC. One thing I have definitely noticed, there were going to be far more AFC green light quarterback situations than NFC. It seems like all the certain quarterback situations are kind of stacked up in the AFC. I think we're going to have fewer, and then I'm going to be excited to go down the tally later. So, not to step on your toes, but I want to give the listeners what we're doing. We're doing a red light, yellow light, green light, kind of a traffic light tier for quarterback situations. Red light means that team needs to stop right now and go out and get a quarterback before they can move forward. Yellow light is maybe you can run that light. We'll see what happens. And green light is full ball forward. You're heading into 2023 with that quarterback. And I think there's going to be fewer of those green lights in the NFC than there were in the AFC. I think that's pretty obvious, but we'll get to the actual numbers.
When you look at quarterbacks for fantasy, because again, we're fantasypoints.com, I thought the AFC would dominate when you just look at fantasy points for the season. But, injuries and other things happening with Lamar. I was shocked with how many NFC guys were sprinkled throughout the top 12. When you look at Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields, who came in 5th overall, Geno Smith, a surprise season, Daniel Jones, Kirky Cousin, a perennial back end of the top 10, even Jared Goff and Tom Brady. So I think that surprised a lot of folks when you look at, everybody's great in the AFC, and that's why no free agent quarterbacks want to go there. The NFC showed up this year, actually, for fantasy.
It did. We had guys like, obviously, Jalen Hurts, who was highly drafted. We had, Kirk Cousins. You're right. I mean, the NFC, there was still an element of you can stream your quarterbacks this year. Although, I saw, I think it was Greg Ambrosius from the NFFC who tweeted yesterday, like there were 11 quarterbacks off the board in the first 5 rounds of one of their super best or early best ball drafts. And I think that's because the traditional pocket passer is kind of going out of vogue. And even so, a quarterback you might consider mediocre can run a little bit now. And we'll definitely be getting into that. We're going to start doing drafts here soon, I think, Drake, on this program and going through and coming up with takes. But I thought this was a fun exercise heading into the offseason because we know, look, this exercise is moot in a month, so might as well do it now.
So let's start things off with the Atlanta Falcons. They started their year with Marcus Mariota. They ended the year with Desmond Ridder. If you look at the Falcons, they finished their season at 7-10. So, with a new coaching staff, Joe, I guess you could say 7-10 is a solid year for Atlanta. They got a young squad. I don't necessarily think, looking at your color coordination, are they a yellow? Mariota, we know that's not the answer. We can't go there, but Ritter, it's not like he's a first round pick either. I think they're yellow, maybe blinking more towards the red.
I agree. I think Ritter did some good things. I thought he was terrible in his first start, but you know what? You gotta understand this was a third round pick who did not play well in his first start, and then he didn't turn the ball over, at least interception wise. He lost a couple of fumbles. He threw for 2 touchdowns in his last game. Didn't throw a single touchdown until his fourth start, by the way. So maybe that's an indictment. But he got the ball to Drake London. There weren't a whole lot of weapons here. I don't think he didn't play with Kyle Pitts at all. Did Desmond Ritter? This is yellow for me. And what I think Atlanta is, if Atlanta can't go out and get a slam dunk veteran, and how many of those are out there?
Not many. I mean, Brady's not going to Atlanta.
No.
Aaron Rodgers isn't going to Atlanta. I mean, they're going to be in that, Derek Carr sweepstakes, I think, when it's like, all right, well, he's somebody.
Ryan
and with that, what's that?
Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, one of those two guys. I think that's really where they're looking. Otherwise, probably just let Desmond Ritter run for another year.
Yeah, and then the question becomes Arthur Smith, who's coming off his second year as the coach, is all right. Well, what's my job security if I go into next year with Desmond Ritter? And I was like, we liked him, we drafted him, but we didn't get a really great evaluation of him because we don't have a great receiving core. The offensive line, I think, performed a lot better than people anticipated. They ran the ball well. Tyler Algier, I think, is going to be a fascinating player in best ball drafts, Drake. Not to go off on a tangent there, because as we know, so a lot of times these like third day rookies who end up impressing at running back get their fantasy or dynasty status absolutely kneecapped by an earlier draft pick in the next draft. So he's going to be a fascinating player. But Atlanta did not have a lot of talent. So it's kind of hard to evaluate Desmond Ritter in that regard, given that he was a third-round rookie, somebody who a lot of teams in the NFL had some questions about. But I'm totally with you. This is yellow light. If they don't get, I think it's like Derek Carr or bust, maybe like if Lamar Jackson somehow hits the open market, Lamar Jackson ends up in Atlanta. I think Atlanta is a team that will explore every avenue. I just don't know if Atlanta is an appealing landing spot for a quarterback who's going to have the ability to decide, okay, I think Derek Carr should probably have at least 3 suitors where he's like, all right, these are good options. Maybe a Ryan Tannehill is like, it's not going to get better for me than going to Atlanta as the presumed starter under my former offensive coordinator, under whom I had a lot of success. It's not going to get better for me than that. So I'm going to go there. But like an Aaron Rodgers, like you said, Brady would retire before he went to Atlanta. Aaron Rodgers would probably retire before he went to Atlanta. So I think it's like that tier, the more of the unexciting veteran. Atlanta picks. Let me go to Tankathon. Atlanta's got the 8th pick. So if they're not sold on Ritter and they are sold on like, let's say a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson, they don't got far to go. And maybe one of those guys falls to them. So there are a lot of avenues for Atlanta to go get a quarterback this offseason, which is why I have them firmly in the yellow tier. And it's yellow and not red because I did think Ritter did some good things.
And again, you're picking 8th. You won 7 games. Again, we've played an extra game now in the NFL, but if you're winning 7 games, you're technically, most of the time, you're not getting a top 10 pick.
Right.
So, maybe this is their opportunity. They think we're not that far off. Our division's kind of a joke. I'm going to throw one name at you because we're going to get to him later with his soon-to-be former team. How about Carson Wentz as a bridge type? We're going to run the football all day. You wouldn't have to ask it to do too much. Maybe. On a real cheap deal.
I think maybe Wentz, like if you still believe in Wentz, and there's probably very few who do, I think you can maybe convince yourself that, like, you know what? You can get him into that Arthur Smith system the same way Tannehill did, and maybe get a better performance out of him. Wentz is going to be fascinating because, like, let's get to Carson Wentz later. But you're right. He's going to be a player who's going to be interesting to watch this offseason.
We're going to move over to the Arizona Cardinals now. Real disappointing season for Arizona. 4-13, finished dead last in the NFC West. In terms of the draft, Arizona has the 3rd overall pick. Now they paid their quarterback. They've got Kyler Murray, 5 years, $230 million contract. They just handed out to him. It doesn't make really much this year. It's going to kick in 2024. But Joe, I mean, there's attitude issues. There's going to be a new head coach. There's rumors that people are like, we got to move on from Kyler Murray. I mean, you just gave this guy a huge contract. Unless someone's in love with him, they're not going to pay him this massive contract and give you multiple first-round picks for him. So let's be honest here. Kyler Murray is going to be in the desert for a long time.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the dead cap number. It's basically $100 million this year. It's $81 million in 2024. It's $33 million in 2025, but they saved 12 against the cap. No, I mean, Kyler Murray's there. The question is he going to be there week one? Cliff Kingsbury insinuated at the end of the season before he lost his job that Kyler Murray is not going to be ready for week one, which is going to make him really difficult to evaluate for fantasy. What's this receiving group going to look like? DeAndre Hopkins could be on the move this offseason, but this is a green light. They paid the guy. He's hurt now. They have to live in that bed. They're going to have a new general manager and a new coach. Kyler Murray, I'm disappointed here, Drake, because I said during the season, I said, the thing, my problem with Kyler Murray is it doesn't feel like he's gotten a whole lot better since his rookie season. Now, he's been a guy who's come in and he's so spectacularly gifted as a thrower and a runner where, like, even as good as he is as his rookie season in a really good year for the team is going to be enough to win them games and get them to the playoffs. But I did say last year, I'm like, this Cliff thing, they don't do anything creative with them. I was like, man, when this team gets a coaching change, I am going to be all in on Kyler Murray. And then the injury super complicates that. And I just don't know. I have to see where he's going this offseason before I decide to invest in Kyler Murray. But given that, knowing that there's the attitude issues, can a new coach get in there and change the culture? I really think that's what the Arizona Cardinals and the Bidwell family are hoping for, that a coach can get in there, change the culture, and just make everybody kind of enjoy playing the game again. But Kyler's got to attack his rehab. That there's so many layers to this onion. The only thing we know is he will be there next year and almost certainly the year after that.
And they're going to need someone to probably start the season because that was a pretty bad injury suffered late in the year. So they could be in the market for one of these bridge type guys to try to maybe get them through the first 4 or 5 weeks. So we'll see what happens there. Carolina, talking about teams who have early picks. They have the 9th overall selection in the NFL draft this year. Panthers, again, in a bad division, finished 7-10, like 3 of the other squads in the NFC South. They've got to be going out shopping for a quarterback here, Joe. There's no way you're still rolling out with Sammy Darnold next year. I think their situation has got to be red.
It's completely red. They have a top 10 pick. Everybody's connecting them to Levis, Richardson, whoever. We'll see if somebody else emerges from that quarterback group as the hype train gets started. Maybe they in Atlanta are competing for the same kind of guys. Now, here is the thing with Carolina, though. Now, maybe you're not excited about, David Tepper seems to be a really hands-on owner. But when you look at their draft capital, this is kind of a low-key appealing job for me. They were a competitive team this season under Steve Wilks. Maybe Steve Wilks gets that head coaching job. I think the latest rumor is that it's come down to like Steve Wilks and Frank Reich as Carolina's head coach. But you look at the draft capital. Look, they're getting a second rounder from San Francisco. They're getting a third rounder from San Francisco. They're getting a fourth rounder from San Francisco in this draft. You have a ton of ability to move up and attack that quarterback position if you want to. If you're like, you know what? We think we have a competitive roster. Let's go get Derek Carr and let's use that draft capital to build this roster around him. You're going to have a lot of ability to maneuver if you're with the Carolina Panthers this offseason. So I thought that was actually one of the more low-key appealing jobs, despite the fact that the quarterback situation is terrible right now. But you look at the roster, you look at the ability to build that roster, I think you can make an argument that is really a job that a lot of savvy coaches would want to have, but we damn well know this is a red light for the quarterback spot. They need to get one this offseason.
The Chicago Bears, I think this is pretty safe to say, is a green light. Justin Fields really shined, but we're going to have a conversation here. Now, Justin Fields finished 5th overall in total fantasy points at the quarterback position. In his 15 games, he averaged 20.4 points per game. Really, this year just showed off what an electric runner he is. I mean, the guy is a video game come to life, but we know this team has 0 weapons on the outside. The line's terrible. It's a really bad football team. So the Chicago Bears, Joe, had the number 1 overall pick. Yeah. We know that there are a bevy of quarterbacks available. Justin Fields still on a rookie contract. That's very appealing if you want to trade him to someone. So the question now I pose to you, Joe Dolan, fantasypoints.com managing editor. Do you draft a quarterback at number 1, or do you roll with Fields? Or do you draft a quarterback at number 1 and trade Fields, or do you pick something else or trade down and roll with Justin Fields as your future?
So this is where I have to explain the criteria we used in the last podcast, in the AFC podcast here with this situation. Green light quarterback is where I was basically saying everything outside of a natural like disaster, something completely unforeseen, I know this guy is that team's quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can have that level of certainty right now with Justin Fields. I really don't know if I can have that level of certainty. They have the number 1 overall pick. If they decide, look, Bryce Young is a slam dunk, and we're not sure about Justin Fields, I think they make the move. Do I think that is the most likely thing for them to do? No, I do not think it's the most likely thing that they will do. I think it's just a possibility, but it is too good a possibility for me to put this in a green light. I think it's much more likely that a team that's going to be like, wait a minute. You're going to draft a quarterback number 1 overall, and you want us to trade a first-round pick and more for the guy that you're moving on from?
Mm-hmm.
What am I missing? A general manager might say. What am I missing? And I think that is a something that's absolutely fascinating. So I think the most likely outcome is they trade the pick.
And they probably should. They've got a lot of holes, and there's teams that are going to want to move up. Even teams that need a quarterback in the top 10, Indianapolis, Atlanta, Carolina, could want to move up just to jump ahead of the others. And Bears, they got a lot of holes. If they could collect a number of picks for this year, next year down the road, that's going to set them up for success. We don't know you can win with Justin Fields, but you've got something there. I can't go and say Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, any of these guys are markedly better right now than Justin Fields.
Now, all I know is if the Bears evaluate this and say, we are certain he's better than Justin Fields, you have to take him. In the same way that Fields is not nearly as big a disaster as Josh Rosen, but Arizona did that. And say whatever you want about Kyler Murray, and I've said it on this show, that was the right call, taking Kyler Murray and moving on from Josh Rosen. So Fields, who completed, by the way, 7 of 21 passes the last time we saw him, this is a team, and here is why I think they're more likely to trade the pick. They traded basically a first-round pick for Chase Claypool.
Awful trade.
Drake, so
awful.
I threw like a tweet out there. It's like, right now the Bears have traded a first-round pick for Chase Claypool. It's the 32nd overall pick, by the way, because Miami does not have a first-rounder. Miami forfeited because of the Brady tampering. Mm-hmm. And I said, man, they got like 11 catches for Chase Claypool. The number of Bears fans defending that trade in my mentions, it's like, dude, it's Chase Claypool.
Bears fans are delusional.
It's not like, when the Titans traded a second for Julio and you're like, well, at least it was Julio Jones. Yeah, it didn't work, but like it was at least Julio Jones. I mean, what is wrong with you? I was like, I understand. We criticized Ryan Poles this offseason because we're like, oh my God, he didn't get Justin Fields any help. And then he goes out at the deadline and he intends to get him help. And sometimes I'm caught between like, all right, we told him to go get help and he tried to do it, and then we made fun of him for doing it. But I was like, couldn't you have just traded like a 6th round pick for like Zach Pascal or something? Like, like something that's not going to cost you and is going to get you the same level of production. I don't know. It was an awful trade. I think that's why they're more likely to trade the pick, because we don't really have a whole lot to evaluate Justin Fields on. We do know Justin Fields is spectacularly talented. We saw that as the runner. I mean, I guess Lamar hasn't had any of these, oh my God, like 80-yard runs recently, but that's what it feels like with what we're seeing with Justin Fields. I think it's 90-10. They keep Fields and trade the pick, but it's too high for me to say, look, Ryan Poles did not draft Justin Fields. Ryan Poles did not evaluate Justin Fields, at least in the context of this offense. There's enough there for me to say this is a yellow light quarterback situation. And anybody arguing that it's not a valid discussion is out of their minds. It's the first thing the Chicago Bears did this offseason when they knew they had the number 1 pick. Matter of fact, if they had the number 2 pick, they're probably discussing it as well.
So I think where the conversation goes here is you go look at all the quarterbacks in the draft. How many real first round difference makers are there? And then these teams down below, if you're Carolina, right? If you're Tennessee, Houston needs a quarterback, right? And then you're going to say, all right, do we have enough ammo to get up into the top 3 to make a selection? Or is it cheaper to make the trade to the Bears for Fields? Because either way, you're trading a number of assets, but it's probably cheaper to go get Fields than to go get a top 3 draft pick.
Because you have 3 years of Fields left in theory because of the contract, and you have 5 of the number 1 draft pick. So there is a whole layer of onion just with this Chicago Bears situation. I think it's one of the more fascinating situations. And that's why I think people are gravitating towards this discussion, because it is fascinating. It is rare for this to happen. This isn't like the Jaguars, and say what you want about Trevor Lawrence's rookie season. He showed more as a passer than Justin Fields has shown so far. And also we knew that coaching staff was an utter disaster last year. So we had that situation last year. This discussion did not come up last year, mostly because I don't think there was a quarterback. I mean, there wasn't a quarterback nearly as highly regarded as any of these guys in last year's draft class. But I really just, people arguing that this is not a valid conversation are out of their minds. It is every general manager's job to evaluate the players on the roster, the assets it has on the roster and through draft, and to construct the best roster possible. And it is up to Ryan Poles to decide if that's Bryce Young and fewer draft picks around him, or Justin Fields and a bevy of draft picks around him. And that is an open-ended question.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll be talking about that as the season goes on. And if you're looking to keep your season going on, you want to go over to fantasypoints.com. Right now, we've got our super early bird special, 30% off all subscriptions, no promo code needed, 30% off any package. That goes until the Super Bowl. When the Super Bowl kicks off, that program goes away. Folks, don't wait. You know you're going to be signing up for betting content, for fantasy content, for just general NFL stuff, because where else do you get it besides fantasypoints.com with the guru, with the grinder? There's a lot of nicknames over here, Joe. I love it. We're going to come up with some good ones. Yeah, our buddy Scott Barrett, Graham Barfield, the data package. We haven't even broken that out yet. Wait till you see all the bells and whistles we got on the back end for this. Go over to fantasypoints.com. Lock yourself in for 2023. 30% off right now. No promo code needed. You don't even got to tell them your boy Drake sent you, but they'll know. Trust me, between me and you, they'll know. All right. So let's keep rolling here in a conversation that everybody's had this week. And it's about the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott makes $40 million a year. There's a lot of folks who go, they got to move on from Dak. He led the league in interceptions and he missed 5 games and he had a down year and all this. You got Dak Prescott. You're paying him $40 million. In terms of, did Dak play well? That's a different discussion. But in terms of, is Dak the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys? There's no question about it.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. They completely messed up last offseason. They were in such a hurry to move on from Amari Cooper that Jerry completely misread the market. You got a 5th-round pick for Amari Cooper in the same market where Devontae Parker's getting a 3rd. They paid Michael Gallup instead of paying Amari Cooper. That was obviously a huge mistake. Dak Prescott's there in Dallas. I mean, It's a big discussion. There are guys from the Ringer just absolutely twisting themselves into knots, like defending Dak Prescott this week. I'm not going that far, guys. You don't have to do that. Like, nobody does it for Kirk Cousins. But Dak Prescott's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. That is an absolute no doubter. Again, barring some like fantasy trade, I saw like there was some guy was like, would you trade Dak Prescott for Aaron Rodgers? Barring something like completely out of thin air like that. No, Dak Prescott's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. So for the conversation we're having today, we won't expand too much on it, but yes, Dak will be there next year. How about Jared Goff in Detroit? Now, Goff had a really nice season, and we're talking about a Detroit Lions team that surpassed all expectations and nearly made the playoffs on the last day of the season. Detroit finished second in the NFC North. They were 9-8 this year. And in terms of draft capital, they got the 6th overall pick. So if they wanted to do something there, maybe they could, but they still have Jared Goff. Jared Goff's got $33 million average salary. Let me look at his contract for this year, Joe. And let's see, there's an out with $10 million dead cap they could do this year and get out of Jared Goff. So I don't necessarily think they're going to go with some other veteran, but if you want to get rid of Jared Goff and draft someone, I can get behind that.
Yeah. This is yellow for me, and this is yellow in a different way from some of the others, where like with Desmond Ridder, where I think it's yellow flashing red. I think this is yellow flashing green. Jared Goff is one of the best passing quarterbacks in the NFL, and I think we understand Jared Goff's ceiling. We also understand his floor if he's not well insulated and well protected. But Detroit has accumulated a massive amount of talent on the offensive line. They've accumulated a massive amount of talent at wide receiver with St. Brown. We're scratching the surface with Jamison Williams. Massive amount might be a little wild because DJ Chark is a free agent, but you've got a really good foundation with St. Brown and Jamison Williams there. You've got Swift and Williams in the backfield. I think it's more likely than not that Jared Goff is the Lions quarterback next year, and they try to make a run for it. And I think they're one of those teams who's like, man, if we're picking 6th, and by the way, that's the Rams pick. That's not their pick. They also pick in the teens. So if they decide we want Bryce Young, they might well be one of those teams who has the ability to do that. The question then becomes, do the Chicago Bears want the Detroit Lions to get Bryce Young? So there's a tricky scenario as well, because we know the Texans need a quarterback at number 2. Yep. So Detroit might be like, man, we really think Bryce Young's the guy, but there's no way that Chicago's going to trade with us. Detroit might just have to stand pat. I think Jared Goff is their quarterback next year, but they're a team that I have to put them in the yellow tier only because of the maneuverability that they have with the 6th and the 18th pick.
And I mean, we can get into draft talk all off season here, but it really puts Arizona in an advantageous spot too, because they're a pick ahead of Indianapolis, who needs a quarterback. So everybody could be eyeing that number 3 spot, knowing that the Cardinals don't need a QB. Cardinals could get a nice haul for that pick and really kind of reinvigorate this roster with a new GM.
Here's another reason why I think the Bears are going to trade the pick is because you look at Indianapolis at 4, you look at Houston at 2. The Bears could be like, hey, Houston, you don't want us to trade this pick to Indy? Well, then you're giving us 2 and a future and your first round pick next year just to move up to number 1. And then Chicago could take the 2 pick and then trade back from that. So
that would be a masterful job for the Bears.
And that's what I think. Like, that's why I think it's more likely Chicago trades the pick, because of all these teams who need a quarterback. Scott in our chat says you have to separate his home and road stats. He was really good golf at home and bad golf on the road. And I think what that speaks to is that Jared Goff is, on his best day, he's a really good quarterback. On his worst day, he's a bottom tier starter. And I just feel like that's probably most quarterbacks in the NFL, most decent quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think I would qualify Jared Goff, Drake, as a decent quarterback. And it's a decent quarterback, though, who we know in the right situation can go play in a Super Bowl. We also know what happened in that Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we all talk about Jared Goff because we look at everything through a fantasy lens a lot of times, and we go, Jared Goff kind of stinks. Jared Goff was the number 1 pick, played in the Super Bowl, had a nice college career. Like, Jared Goff can throw the football. So
okay, he's a very elegant thrower. Like, just a really you protect Jared Goff, he's going to pick you apart. But yeah, I mean, looking at the numbers again, 109.3 quarterback rating. That's not everything, but 109.3 quarterback rating at home, 87.4 on the road, 23 touchdowns to 3 picks at home, 6-4 on the road. So, Mr. Jared Goff's an avid indoorsman, Mr. Drake.
yeah, that's the thing I was going to say. You know what team would make so much sense for Jared Goff because it's kind of like a much lower case from the guy we're going to talk about next? How about the New York Jets with Jared Goff and all those weapons out there and a good running game with Breece Hall? I mean, he's obviously an upgrade over Wilson and Mike, what the hell his name
Mike
is?
White.
Mike White, yep. So we're throwing things out there. That's what we do in the offseason here. So, well, let's move on to the next guy who's going to be fueling speculation in New York, in Green Bay, in Las Vegas, and that's Aaron Rodgers. So Aaron Rodgers' contract is an albatross, to say the least. So if he's traded before June 1st, $40.3 million dead money for the Packers. If he's traded after June 1st, $15.8 million this year, $24.5 million in next year. He's spread out those June 1st cuts over 2 seasons. If he is straight up released, which will not happen, $99.8 million. If he retires, they're still on the hook for 40.3. So what is your signal color for Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers, with Jordan Love waiting in the wings?
I have this as a yellow light. I can't help but feel that like we're still going through the same stuff as last year, though. Oh, Rodgers is as good as gone, and he's not going back. They're going to go to Jordan Love, and then they're going to realize that the best partnership is this partnership, right? Like, hey, we've got these young receivers that started to come on last year. You know, we almost made the playoffs. The dead money really makes this difficult because you would have to really incentivize the Green Bay Packers to take on that money. And keep in mind, Jordan Love's going into his 4th year. So this is not like, oh, you're moving on from Aaron Rodgers and you're going to have a rookie quarterback and that you can massage around that dead money. You're going to have to pay Jordan Love eventually if he is the guy. So I think that makes it really hard to convince the Green Bay Packers to trade Aaron Rodgers. Even though I know there will be teams trying, and maybe they can make that deal work, but it's going to be a difficult situation. I guess if they trade him pre-June 1st, you take the huge dead cap this year, the way like Philly did with Wentz 2 years ago, the way the Falcons did with Ryan last year, and you realize you do still have a quarterback on his rookie contract. But I think it might be tough to incentivize the Packers, knowing how close they were to making the playoffs this year with really a bunch of young weapons around Aaron Rodgers.
That's going to be the story of the offseason, folks. So get ready for that one. Let's go to Los Angeles, where the Rams have Matthew Stafford, and Matthew Stafford a year removed from a Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford played his best football back in the 2021 to 2022 season. He's injured. He's got a back issue. I'm not sure if he comes back and plays again, Joe, with the severity of this issue. They have Baker Mayfield. Who knows with that situation? If you want to bring Baker in, do you think you can really win with Baker Mayfield and that roster and the hamstrung effects of all the contracts and the lack of draft picks? But what do you think quarterback situation with Stafford, with Mayfield? What color designation are you giving the Rams?
Okay, so it's a different situation than Tua, because Tua obviously has concussions, an injury that we're learning more about, but still don't know a whole lot about. I think Stafford's injury, the back, the neck, is probably a little more cut and dry. But if we're going to give Tua a yellow, blinking green, by the way, I think you would agree with that it's more likely than not that Tua's back in Miami. I think it's yellow, blinking green. Sean McVay is back. I think Matthew Stafford is the quarterback for the Rams next year. But if he gets a bad report at some point in May, this could be all over. So I can't sit here and say 100% week 1, Matthew Stafford's out there for the Rams. So I'm going to give this a yellow. I want the green lights. I want that to be absolute Mount Vesuvius level disaster or a shock to the system if that guy's not the quarterback. And I don't think it would be like, oh my Lord, Matthew Stafford's retiring. I don't think that would be like that huge a bombshell knowing what he went through this year.
And Matthew Stafford could stay on this roster for 2023 because he really doesn't make much money. His base salary is only $1.5 million. His cap hit for 2023 is only $20 million. So if you release the guy, he's $49.5 million, which that's not going to happen. So they might just kind of keep him on the roster this year. It's like, we'll see if he comes back later in the year. What do you think of Baker Mayfield, the job he did? Do you think they would lean on him being, again, they have no draft picks?
He was fine. He didn't play well. He was terrible in Carolina. I thought he was better than that with the Rams. What did they sign him to? Is he under contract still? They claimed him off waivers, so I would guess he's.
So you claim that contract?
Yeah.
Let me see what Baker Mayfield's contract looks like here.
Yeah, he's. Oh no, he's a free agent.
Yeah. Let's see. My internet here is we're slowing it down. Yeah, unrestricted free agent. And Baker's never made any money, and he probably still won't. But he could be a guy looking to go to one of those bridge situations. But yeah. I mean, this is the most money he's made in his career. He made 4.8.
I think it's probably more likely he goes back to the Rams.
I think so too.
And just like he's like, we need a solid backup. We'll develop you. This is a good system. We'll rebound from next year. I think it's more likely he goes back to the Rams. Yeah.
Well, a name everyone talks about in Minnesota is Kirk Cousins because, he can't win in prime time. He can't close out. He can't win a playoff game. The Vikings had a fantastic season. The Vikings finished as the number 3 seed, in the NFC. They were 13-4. Awesome year for the Minnesota Vikings. The defense is the major issue in Minnesota. So I think we're pretty content here that Kirky Cousins is going to be back in what would be right now his final year of contract in Minnesota.
And the question is, this is a team that Justin Jefferson, is still on his rookie contract. You're like, where are you going to go? I mean, if you're Minnesota, what better are you getting here as opposed to Kirk Cousins? He's on the final year of his contract. This is a green light for me. He's their quarterback next year. He had a solid year. And in the way that Kirk Cousins always has solid years. And then everybody makes fun of him when he collapses on prime time and in the playoffs, whether that's fair or not. But the performance is probably good enough. Look, you get your team to 13-4, even when they were the most fraudulent 13-win team of all time, as Football Outsiders have been pointing out all year. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of positives to take away from that. He's their quarterback next year.
Well, if you're Kirk Cousins, now you're getting a fully guaranteed, again, he's making $10 million. He got a ton of money up front with this contract, right? He's had a 1-year, $35 million deal. Do you think maybe Kirk Cousins holds out in training camp or wants a little security, a little long-term deal from the Vikings?
I think it's possible. I don't know how well that's going to sit with Minnesota fans after the way the season ended after some of those performances, but I think he could. But Kirk maybe should also sit there and realize, man, I've had a damn good career. I've made a lot of money.
Yeah, no question about it. Let's move on to the New Orleans Saints. Really disappointing year for the Saints. We started the year, we had Jameis Winston under center. We finished the year, Andy Dalton. We were always sprinkling a little Taysom Hill. 7-10 year for the New Orleans Saints. When you look at draft for the New Orleans Saints, I don't believe the Saints have a first-round pick. Oh, no, they don't, because it would have been the 10th pick. They traded that's right, to Philadelphia so they could draft a wide receiver. So Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, and no first-round pick.
This is one of those, veteran situations. Their quarterback's not on this roster. And if they go into next year with Andy Dalton, who was okay, in the way you would expect Andy Dalton to be, I'm giving this a red light, Drake. I don't think the quarterback's on the roster. I think they have to do something different. How can you, I know they don't have a first round pick, so that really kind of chin straps them as to what they can do. But no, they don't have the quarterback on this roster. They didn't play Jameis all year. So I think that tells you what the coaching staff thinks of him.
Let's keep it rolling with the New York Football Giants. Shout out to you Giants fans. You're not playing for a draft pick in trying to negotiate yourself into a top 10 pick here. You made the playoffs and you won a game with Daniel Jones, who finished as QB7 in fantasy football, averaging over 18 points a game. Now, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, they are unrestricted free agents. You could absolutely franchise tag Daniel Jones. I don't know if you necessarily want to pay him that much money for a season, but I think, Joe, the Giants they're going to get something done here with Daniel Jones. Saquon, who knows, who cares? That's another story. But where else are they going to go? When you're looking at the Giants, who are selecting 26th right now, Daniel Jones has got to come back on this team.
I think that's more likely than not, but I mean, he is an unrestricted free agent. So I have to make this a yellow, blinking green. I think Daniel Jones is back here, but he is a free agent. So this is yellow, blinking green for me. Oh my God, Giants fans were buying into the Danny Dimes hype at the end of the year. And I'm not going to go out there and blame that loss to Philly on Daniel Jones. Okay. Like, did he have a good game? No. The Giants were outclassed at literally every position. So I'm not going to go out there and say, oh, Daniel Jones, he should have played better in that game. Not going to do that. But this is obviously a situation where I think he's back. I think maybe the hype was getting a little out of control. You heard Bill Simmons. I don't know if you heard Bill Simmons 2 weeks ago when he was definitely
one of these guys talking Daniel Jones for MVP.
No, he was like, hey, Sal, turn on the TikTok camera there, nephew Kyle. Are we sure Daniel Jones isn't the best quarterback in the NFC?
Oh my God.
He's a thinking man's Josh Allen. So my Bill Simmons impression kind of sounds like Tim Kirkjian. I talked to 3 area scouts who told me that Daniel Jones is going to sign with the Patriots. So my Bill Simmons impression is a little like that, but like the hype got a little out of control, but Daniel Jones was not well supported on that team this year. I think they know that. All of their top receivers are free agents. Hodgins, Slayton, James, Sterling Shepard. They're going to cut Galladay. I think the most likely situation here, and the problem for the Giants, though, is the free agent wide receiver class is terrible. Yeah. So if you're going to pay Daniel Jones on the franchise tag, and you definitely need receivers, my guess is they'll be heavily looking at one at 26 in this draft.
No question about it. Do you give pause to the passing stats for Daniel Jones? I mean, you look at a guy here who threw, I want to say it was 12 games in the season where he threw under 200 yards. I mean, he went over 300 yards twice. This is in 2022 NFL, and that was against Detroit and Minnesota in the regular season, 2 of the crappiest defenses that you'll see as a quarterback. Does that give you pause at all as how limited he really was because he made up so much of it on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, he threw for 300 yards and counting the playoffs 3 times, twice against Minnesota. Mm-hmm. The thing that makes it tough for me is if you look at Daniel Jones's supporting cast the last couple years, it's below average across the board at the wide receiver position. So, and Brian Daboll's a coach who actually has a clue, which is why I think they're going to bring him back. I'm not going to be freaking out about Dan Jones. But like if they bring him back and he's like the QB 14 off the board, I'll probably be investing because he does run. I think they're going to have to improve around him this season. I think they'll probably re-sign a guy like Hodgins. He's an exclusive rights free agent. So basically if they decide to re-sign him, they will. And supplement that with maybe a rookie, a solid veteran. But the hype was a little out of control for me, but I think he probably showed enough that they want to bring him back.
In Philadelphia, the Eagles are preparing for the NFC Championship game, and their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, is preparing to cash in because Hurts makes literally no money here. He's on the final year of his rookie deal. So he's making $4 million next year, it'll be the final year of his rookie deal. He'll make $4 million, then be an unrestricted free agent. The Eagles are going to have to pay Jalen Hurts this offseason. They don't want to wait until they're up against it. They want to get this done because every year you wait, the price tag goes up. So I think obviously the Eagles, it's as green gets in Philadelphia. It's Eagles green for who's the quarterback, but it's just a matter of how much is Jalen Hurts going to get paid.
Yeah, this is a green light for me, but it does bring to mind an interesting conversation. Did you see Micah Parsons' tweet yesterday?
Micah Parsons should not have a Twitter account. But he's kind of a dope. He's like your uncle that you look at on Facebook and you go like, oh man, like why am I related to this guy?
Here's what he essentially tweeted. He's like, so 3 of the 4 teams in the championship have a quarterback on their rookie contract. You know, and I mean, the 49ers do have Jimmy Garoppolo, but yeah, so there's Micah Parsons' point. And now I think most, Dallas fans are like, oh my God, he's taking a shot at Dak. And to me, it raised an interesting question, because does any general manager in the league have the balls to say, hey, we've put an all-star Pro Bowl caliber roster around this young quarterback on his rookie deal, let's say the way the 49ers have and the way the Eagles have, and we think that's the reason that our team is really good? Not to take away from what the quarterback has done. And my thing is, if there was any general manager in the league who had the audacity to do something like that, it would probably be Howie Roseman.
Yep.
The question then becomes, though, it's like the whole thing. I guess the Cowboys did it in '89, but the whole thing is, hey, we have 2 first-round picks. Let's take 2 quarterbacks. Like, in theory, you can see why that works, but like, there's a reason nobody's done it. So first and foremost, this is green light. Jalen Hurts is the Eagles quarterback next year. But I'm just opening the discussion to be, hey, we'll go and we'll draft another second-round quarterback.
That wouldn't surprise me at all, the way this team works now.
Right. And we'll try to transition to that guy. But then see, here's where it turns into, hey, I can see where that would work. That would be clever. But there's the other problem. We talk about this New York Jets roster as a roster that's ready to win right now, and their quarterback situation was abominable. Jalen Hurts has established himself as a big-time quarterback right now. Whether you think that's in large part because of his roster or not, he's kind of established himself in that regard. And I just don't think, when you're in a situation where you have to massage 53 egos in a locker room. We already saw how like the Hurts Wentz thing in Philadelphia created factions in the locker room that they had to essentially purge. I know the theory has been thrown out there. Hey, will somebody try this? We have a Pro Bowl quarterback, but we think that quarterback is supported by this roster. So we're going to move on from that quarterback before we pay him. And we're going to try to bring another one in here to do the same thing. I just think the position is so hard to play. And there is so much else to go in terms of managing personalities, creating an offense around somebody, that I just don't think it's viable. But I feel like if there was somebody who had the audaciousness to do it, it would be Howie Roseman. I think he's definitely thought of it. I think he's probably realized it's just not viable in a league where you have to manage actual human beings.
I'm with you on that, especially in the fan base. You're talking about a kid who maybe just brought you to the Super Bowl, or at least on the doorstep. So San Francisco 49ers, their opponent this weekend. This is an interesting conversation also. Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, who's going to be returning from injury. Jimmy Garoppolo, this is the final year of his contract. He will be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. So likely Jimmy G is out the door finding greener pastures. And I think the Brock Purdy emergence really is going to allow that, because San Francisco now, they don't have to worry about bringing like Jimmy G back as a safety net for Trey Lance. But Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, where do you see the starting quarterback going here?
So this is unique because I'm going back through the AFC and the NFC. This is my 13th green light that I have among the 2 conferences. This is the only one where I don't know who the green light is.
I was going to think that, yeah. One of these 2 guys is going to start. It's going to be Lance, it's going to be Purdy.
I think it's probably going to be Purdy at this stage. And now maybe things get completely blown up if the 49ers, fall on their faces this weekend against the Eagles, and touchdown
Your lips to
Tom,
God's ears.
Yeah, and touchdown Tom's like, hey, Kyle Shanahan, what's up, man? You tired of falling short of the Super Bowl? So I guess that could happen, but I'm going to say it's green light. It's going to be Lance, or it's going to be Purdy here for the 49ers. I mean, again, we just talked about the value of that quarterback on his rookie contract, and they've got 2 of them. And Trey Lance can maybe get them a draft pick right now. Kind of a fascinating situation to watch this offseason. If the 49ers win this weekend, it's Purdy. There's it's Purdy. If they lose this weekend, especially if he throws a couple picks, then it gets more interesting. But I'm going to green light it with the caveat that I don't know which guy is the green light.
If you decide to go with Brock Purdy, do you trade Trey Lance if you're the 49ers? Makes no money. He's on a rookie deal.
First and foremost, you just traded a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th for Christian McCaffrey. So you probably need to recoup one of those day 2 picks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'd probably get a 3rd rounder. That Trey Lance is a fascinating one because maybe one of these teams that isn't appealing to Rodgers or Carr, or one of these teams that misses out on, let's just say, Ryan Tannehill or something like that. You could trade a 3rd round pick for Trey Lance. That could be appealing. Trey Lance has done nothing to show that he's a top 20 quarterback in the NFL. But he hasn't done anything to show he isn't. I mean, he was a 3rd overall pick.
We just talked about the Philadelphia Eagles and how they love to do kind of wild stuff at the quote-unquote quarterback factory.
Wow.
You think they'd throw a 3rd round pick to San Francisco? Say, we'll take him. You can back up Jalen Hurts. Now it kind of fits the offense a little bit. Yep. Can develop this kid, get him healthy.
Absolutely, I could see them doing that. 100% could see them doing that.
And San Francisco would go, there's no way in hell we're sending this kid.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. Especially since this could become a little bit of a rivalry here with the way these two rosters look. So, no, I completely agree. That would be a fascinating move, though.
32-year-old Geno Smith had quite the season. I think between him and Saquon Barkley for comeback player of the year. What a great story in the Pacific Northwest. Unrestricted free agent Geno Smith. Now, this is a team that they got out of Russell Wilson. They said, maybe we'll see what Geno's got. He'd be a bridge. Do you think that Geno Smith gets a contract extension here?
Yes.
And is the future of the Seattle Seahawks?
I think he gets a contract extension with Seattle. But again, let's go back to the Daniel Jones situation. He's a free agent. So I can't sit here and say, he's definitely their quarterback. So this is a yellow light for me. Geno's starting somewhere next year. He's been a name I've neglected to mention for a lot of these yellow or red light teams that I know don't have a quarterback. I think a lot of teams could probably talk themselves in to Geno Smith as their quarterback. But I think this is yellow light. I think he gets extended in Seattle, but he is a free agent. So I can't sit here and tell you, yes, absolutely, he is the quarterback of the Seahawks next year.
You know where I think he could fit in really well if he leaves Seattle? Tampa Bay.
Sure.
Look at the way these rosters are built. I mean, he goes out there, he's got all these receivers still. They got a little bit of a run game. They get that offensive line healthy. You're not going to have to pay him, what you would some of these other elite quarterbacks. So that would be my tip if he doesn't come back to Seattle. All right. We just mentioned the Buccaneers. Let's go there. Tom Brady is looking to go elsewhere. I don't know necessarily if that happens, but I'd rather say Tom Brady's either going to retire or go somewhere else. I don't see him coming back to Tampa Bay.
I have this as a red light. I think the Tampa Bay thing has run its course. Tom Brady did Look, you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you signed Tom Brady 3 years ago and you tell any Buccaneers fan, any member of that organization, you're going to make the playoffs 3 times, you're going to win a Super Bowl. We got every cent worth out of Tom Brady. And Tom Brady thanked the fans. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank this organization. I think that was a goodbye message. Tom Brady's tenure in San Francisco and Tampa Bay, rather. Ooh, maybe that's a Freudian slip there. His tenure in Tampa Bay ended sourly, just like it did in New England. It doesn't take away what Tom Brady did for the Buccaneers, but he's gone. He will not be there next year.
The last team we'll talk about today, the Washington Commanders. Lord only knows how and why Ron Rivera is still the head coach of this football team, but he is at the moment. And the Commanders finished 8-1. They started the year with Carson Wentz. Then we transitioned to Taylor Heineke. We ended the year with Sam Howell out of North Carolina, who reports said, this team is telling potential head coaching candidates that Sam Howell is their quarterback, which I don't understand because you didn't want to play this kid all year. You put him in one garbage game. And now all of a sudden he's the face of the franchise, which just shows how poorly run the Commanders are. But what color designation are you giving the old Commandos?
Yellow flashing red. We know it's not Wentz.
It's their team colors.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, excuse me.
Yellow flashing burgundy.
Burgundy. Oh, man. I called it. I called it maroon on air once, and our producer Javon, our former assistant producer at SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, was like, he's a born and bred DC. He gets in the microphone, and if you know Javon, they used to do the voice of God with him on air. He went burgundy. He was not into me saying maroon. So no, burgundy and gold. This is gold flashing burgundy right now. I think Hal did some good things in that game. HB Heineke. John Hansen has taken to calling him Hospital Ball Heineke. I've shortened that to. For some reason, I just really love calling him HB Heineke because it sounds like a oil tycoon from the 19th century.
Maybe HB Heineke will buy the team.
Yeah, get HB Heineke to purchase this god awful franchise. But I think this is like a Derek Carr, Geno Smith kind of area. Like where I told you on the last podcast, I don't think the Colts can talk their fans into another 30+ quarterback. The Commanders could do that, and their fans are like, all right, wake me up when you sell the team.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to be interested in this team until you sell it anyway, so do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, let us know when you're giving out Sean Taylor popsicle stick night or something, with all the disasters they do with that. But yeah, I agree with you. That team is in trouble. It's just needs a whole reboot, and everybody's got to go. But who's not going anywhere? Joe and we're with you here every single week on the 2 Point Stance. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Go over to the YouTube page. Make sure you're subscribed to Fantasy Points. Just search it, baby. It's that easy. Hit that subscribe button. There's a bevy of content. It's not just Joe and You're going to get the betting content. You're going to get the data points. Talk about some of these other great shows we've got on the YouTube channel, Joe. I mean, you're in as the managing editor. All the great talent on the team.
So obviously I did the Fantasy Points daily lineup during the season, which was basically a rundown of the headlines. Not so much for me to do in the off season there. We're going to have underdog drafts. We're going to have FFPC drafts all off season. You and I are going to be doing draft content. We're going to talk. One of the things we really want to do with this show, Drake, is not that this is unique, but we want to bring in interviews, which is something we want to bring in outside interviews from around Fantasy Points, what people are doing, Scott Barrett and Graham Barfield and John Hansen and all those guys. Our guy, Brett Whitefield, with the data package is going to be huge on draft. Wes Huber is going to be huge on draft. I think it's going to be a fascinating offseason here. And you and I'm glad to spearhead this with you. I'm glad to talk to you on a Thursday morning. I mean, we just find time to record these things. Drake, one more thing. Let's drop one more thing. You know how like Steve Jobs used to do that at the Mac keynotes? I don't know if you ever remember that. Like he would act like he wrapped up and then he said one more thing and then he'd drop a bombshell. This isn't so much a bombshell, but while we were on air, the New York Jets announced that they have hired Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator. That's going to lead to a lot of speculation. Okay. First and foremost, it's going to be a lot of guys wishing they could call into Francesa right now and complain that they hired Nathaniel Hackett. And then the cope 30 seconds later is going to be, oh my God, he's best friends with Aaron
Rodgers. Yeah, well, Denver thought that last year too. And go ask Mark Schlereth on draft day how well that worked out when he's tweeting out, oh yeah, Aaron Rodgers is coming here. Yeah, Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett, he was terrible. He was in over his head in Denver. He's been an offensive coordinator in a lot of spots, but you can poke holes in that too. I remember when he was the offensive coordinator here at Syracuse University, Doug Marrone was calling the plays. So, he's been with some really good quarterbacks, and that covers up a lot of sins. We saw that with another Jets hire, their old bug guys. What the hell is that guy's name?
Adam Gase.
Adam Gase. Here, there you go. It's, oh no, he's great. He's worked all these quarterbacks. Is it the coach? Is it the quarterback?
Yeah, I'm Aaron Rodgers. If there was a spot for him to go, I think this Jets offense is ready to win. We also thought that Broncos offense was ready to win this year. So, I don't think Rodgers will drop off the way Wilson did. But, Jets fans are willing to sell their soul to find out. I know that.
They've already sold it. They live in New Jersey. So, come on.
Don't let Hansen hear you say that. Hansen will Haddonfield's a lovely town, by the way.
Is he in Jets Giants territory? Most Jets fans, honestly, are in Long Island. You're a Jets Mets fan, or if you get closer into the city, it's more Yankees Giants, and then you get into Philly and New Jersey. It's split. You get the Giants Jersey, the dividing line.
So I always thought that there was more of a kinship as somebody who grew up a Philly fan, I grew up in Pennsylvania, but right across the bridge from New Jersey. I always felt more of a, believe me, I hate the New York Mets. I despise the New York Mets. They're one of my top 5 hated teams in all of sports. But I always felt there was more of a kinship with Mets Jets fans than Giants Yankees fans.
Oh yeah, if you're a Mets fan, it's a birthright. You have to be a Jets fan. They go together. It's on your, it's your social security card.
I know Mets Giants fans. I know Jets Yankees fans. As a matter of fact, the biggest Jets fan I know is a Yankee fan, which is kind of bizarre to me. But no,
They need some winning in their life.
Mets Jets was always the one I felt more of like a kinship with. Like, hey, yeah, we're not with, right. Like you just mentioned the term birthright. Like there is no birthright there, right? You're Prince Harry. You're out there writing memoirs about how much you hate the Yankees, like that's what Mets Jets fans are. So I always felt more of a kinship, like, because everybody always treats Philly like a little brother, and now like Philly, if they make a run to the Super Bowl here, the Sixers are looking pretty good. The Phillies were in the World Series. It's a pretty good time to be a Philly sports fan, I'll tell you that.
Isn't that funny how that happens with some of these towns where Tampa Bay, San Francisco, these towns, and all the sports teams come together and kind of win in these little pockets? It's a unique little thing.
Well,
Maybe
let's put it this way. I used to have a Flyers flag up on my door back there. That does not. I mean, it exists. I just don't know where it is. I made a pact with myself. I said I was not going to watch a second of Flyers hockey this year, and I have held on to that pact. I'm disgusted by that franchise. And instead, I put up my Pinehurst number 2 flag back there.
Even better. We could get more traction here talking golf courses we visited than talking NHL. So
yeah, I mean, I used to be a Flyer season ticket holder.
Really?
And I have determined, I mean, I couldn't be now. I live in South Carolina, but I love it. But that team has disgusted me. Every move they make, it's just another embarrassment. I can't stand that team right now. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying, I'm going to go be a Lightning fan. No, I will never do that. That's BS. I'll never do that. But no, I just don't have to watch the Flyers. That is my prerogative, and I am not doing it.
There you go. We hope you guys watch us every week here on the 2 Point Stance. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. And we'll be back next time. For Dolan, I'm Drake. See you later, everybody.